So if you're wondering what that huddle was all about, it's because in the Business Today multiverse, we like to do things on the go, in the cloud, right? So I think I gave a little bit of a hint about being a tech geek, and Rekha took it very seriously. None of my pointers will work for this interview. We have changed the agenda of this conversation. We want to have a very well-focused, smart conversation about women in leadership, in tech, and also you're going to tell me what the next billion-dollar idea is all about, Rekha. That's true? She's not going to be revealing the secret sauce. So, Rekha, let's start off with this particular session. I'm glad there's no pressure on me to follow any pointers. But just to understand, when we talk about innovation in the tech space, and at Accenture, there's plenty of that over the past few years, and in the other roles that you've held across India Inc., I want to get to the bottom of what is it a problem, since we were discussing it 5 seconds ago, is it a problem that we can attribute to culture? That we see that some of these themes we discuss at these conferences, but it's one thing to discuss them in theory, and then how does it really pan out in practice? If you were to scan your entire career, could you list it out for us in terms of what really hasn't been working, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritties of it.
In terms of innovation in the industry.
In terms of innovation, why women are not necessarily, really as prevalent in the senior leadership and management as, there is a leaking pipeline that we will allude to, but what are your thoughts?
Okay, these are two very different questions.
Yes.
The first one is innovation, which I'm sure all of us can answer. India as a country, we haven't really been very innovative, and I would put it down to largely innovative. We do a lot of jugaad, but it's only now. And I would put it down to two things. One, economically, we were a third world nation. Let's accept that, and therefore it was very hard. Everybody wanted a government job, and that was it. And if you got a job, you were happy. Second, you didn't have the risk ability. And third, mildly, maybe our education system. But if you see over the last 10, 12 years, the first panel, for example, which was all women entrepreneurs, I mean, impressive, right? That has shifted so dramatically. So that's the big shift.
Sure.
On the technology industry, what was your question again?
All right, we'll delve into that as well. But, it's interesting you're talking about that, the risk-averse sort of mindset. But then there are several impediments when it comes to the growth of women in the sector as well. Have you seen that sort of glass ceiling being shattered over the years, Rekha, that in the last 5 or 10 years especially, and now when Gen Z is entering the workforce, have you seen things changing for the better?
So in the technology sector, certainly. Yes. We are the largest employer of women, bar none, right? And that has come about, one, because of the nature of our work. Two, I think it was just sheer talent shortage, and therefore you got who you could through the door. That has shifted fairly dramatically. I can't say that through my journey. When I started in manufacturing, I was the only woman on the shop floor. There was not even a loo for ladies, and I had to take the production manager's jeep and go to his house. So that has shifted. I wouldn't say that for the rest of the workforce, for the organized workforce. We are not even talking about the unorganized workforce. There's still far too many women who are not in any kind of leadership positions, and we need to change that, and we can talk about that.
All right. Sindhu, it's lovely to see you here as well. The last time we met was at the Tech Today Congress, and there's something that really stood out from that conversation. We were talking about a hybrid workforce, and that was one of the impediments that could be solved with a hybrid form of work. But since then, Sindhu, it's a mixed bag of responses, because a lot of companies have asked us to come back to office, and a lot of hybrid systems have been tossed out of the window. That was something that we had figured out as a solution, but it seems like a new problem has come up, because hybrid and work from home is not necessarily working for a lot of tech companies and companies at large. Will that continue to be an impediment, especially for women in their mid-career stage, and some of the things that you'd like to allude to as well?
No, first of all, it's great to be here, and I was just totally blown away by all the conversations that happened earlier on. And many times, right, these conversations happen in a room full of women, but I think there needs to be a lot more men as well, who listen into some of these conversations. But
that's why they put me on this panel.
I know, you're here, but we need a lot more. But to your question on hybrid working, see, I'll go back to that question you asked, Rekha, around innovation, right? Because a lot of the companies which are product-led companies like ours, for us it's super important that we have our people together, because we all know that, I mean, many of the startups were also here. All those brilliant ideas don't happen just in the confines of your room and your home, right? Of course, they can happen. But especially when you're talking about large-scale products that you take to market at scale, it's super important that to kind of drive and inspire that innovation, you need people at least to come together once in a way. But flexible working is here to stay. I mean, it's not going away at all, right? And it gives a huge opportunity for us in the tech industry to really tap into talent that exists across the length and breadth of the country, which today a lot of women, or even for that matter men today after post-COVID, find it a bit, hey, it worked from my hometown. Now why should I move back to the headquarters or anything of that sort? So again, I'd say it depends on the roles. It depends on what exactly is the nature of your work. Of course, we're talking about scaling the workforce. I mean, today, if I just look at the sheer numbers, right? I mean, we are the top 3 countries in the world which produce the maximum number of STEM talent. 43% of that STEM talent is women. But when you talk about hiring women into the workforce, it's just 19%, unfortunately. So still a long way to go, right? So flexible work, of course, addresses that to a great extent. But I'd still stick to the fact that when you're driving and thriving with innovation, it's super important that people come back together.
Okay. Since Rekha spoke about frugal innovation or jugaad early on, I'm not sure it gets the right flavor of jugaad, but I'm coming close. But Arundhati, I'd like to really ask you this one. I'm going to really throw in a few statistics and then get your thoughts. 30 to 40%, I think 37% of women joining the workforce here in India. When you go into senior management, C-suite, we're seeing, what, 4 or 5%. There is a problem in that pipeline, and we will be touching upon some of the reasons that happens. But what are the, from your understanding of the banking space and now of a private company that is really innovating, what are the real challenges there, Arundhati? And how can we fix them?
So this leaky pipeline is something that we've been talking about for quite a while. And obviously, there's a lot of research going on also as to how best we can address this. But we are all aware that, at least in India, when I was looking at the HR portion in the bank, I'd done a survey, a small survey, to determine which were the times in a woman's career that we saw the maximum attrition. And we found that there were 3 periods in an Indian woman's career when the maximum number of people fell off. One, of course, is the childbearing years, when the child is really small. And the reason for that is there's not enough of an ecosystem that supports the woman at that point of time. The second period, strangely in India, is when your child is between the class 10 to 12. And that's when, things become really, really competitive. And the mother is expected to be the one that supports the child and chauffeurs the child around to the various coaching classes, gives them the comp plan at the right time, wakes them up at 3 a.m. in the morning in order to do the dumb, or whatever they call it, the practice tests and stuff like that. And they feel very guilty about not being there for the child in case the child doesn't make it. Okay? So they feel that they haven't really been there for the child and they give up. And the third period, again, in India, is when either a parent or a parent-in-law falls sick. And that happens because, again, we don't have too much of geriatric care in India. Even if it's there, it's very costly. And sometimes these are the people that have helped you stay in your career by bringing up your children. And you feel very guilty about leaving them at home with caretakers while you continue with your career. And therefore, again, that guilt is something that's very difficult for them to bear. They take a call and they give up on their career. So that's the reason, while I was in SBI, I had introduced what I said was a 2-year sabbatical for both child and elderly care.
Right.
And actually speaking, 2 years after we have introduced this, we did a survey and we found that we had saved something like 673 careers. Okay?
Wow.
And I remember one lady, especially, in one of my visits, she came up to me and she told me that, but for you, I'd have lost a 22-year-long career. Because my mother-in-law fell very sick, I felt extremely bad about leaving her at home, so I took a year sabbatical off in order to look after her. Unfortunately, she passed away in 3 months' time, and I'm back at work. But for those 3 months, I would have lost my entire career, because I would have given up otherwise. Now, I was, always hopeful that this is something that would be replicated across industry. It hasn't been.
Correct.
But I really do believe that there are periods in a woman's life when you have to be very flexible about the way they, they address or prioritize home and work. And if you are able to give support to the women at that particular point of time, they will come back and they will be extra loyal and deliver much more than they would have otherwise, merely because they understand that they have been supported during that period of time. So I think, if you're asking why is this leaky pipeline happening, the leaky pipeline is a result of the structure of society as we have it now. It's on account of the fact that people don't get enough support. It's also on account of the fact that sometimes people don't feel supported. If you look at the promotion exercises, I remember there was one time, again in my earlier organization, when there was not a single person promoted from AGM to DGM. And I remember that there was a party like this at the chairman's house, and you have a lovely lawn over there if you remember. Yes. So I talked to the chairman and I asked that you couldn't find a single AGM, woman AGM that could be promoted. And he said, yeah, but ask how many of these women have been to difficult places like Gadchiroli. And I asked him back that I agree that they may not have been to Gadchiroli. The fault is not theirs. It's you who does the posting. They don't do their own posting. And the second is, you mean to say all the 80 men have been to Gadchiroli? Have they all been to difficult postings? So, there are things, called unconscious bias, by the way.
Right.
And unconscious bias training is something that I did in my current organization. It's not there in the public sector. And frankly, I was surprised to find that I had biases myself. I thought being a woman, I didn't have bias. I did have it. When you actually go through the, the entire experience, you find that you yourself have those biases. Because after all, we are products of this society.
Yeah.
And that is something, again, when women feel they're not valued, that they're not getting, that people who are obviously less capable than them are getting ahead, they have a tendency of dropping out of sheer frustration. So that's also another reason why they drop out. So we need to address all of these.
Absolutely. You touched on a couple of points, and my next question, Rekha, to you, I need a 10-second answer from you as well, just to wrap up what you were saying. A standing ovation awaiting. When you moved from the public sector to the private sector, did you notice a sea of change in that sort of narrative and culture? And that'll bring me to my next theme.
I won't say that there was a sea change, but yes, I think the awareness is far more in the private sector than in the public sector.
All right. Rekha, it's interesting when we talk about some of these themes. You're also on the board of Biocon, Invest India, the XLRI School of Business. Very interesting insights that would be coming from those boardrooms as well. Could you share with us if these conversations are being had seriously at some of these boardrooms and across the world when you've traveled, or is it mere lip service?
So I would say if you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, the answer would be no. There were no conversations about moving women up or, other than lip service. And, when the regulation was made about having more women directors by the Indian regulators, then you found that everybody because they had to meet the regulation, got their mother, sister, relatives onto the boards, right? And that was the way to tick the box. That has had a big shift. I mean, there's increased awareness that women bring something to the table besides, of course, the fact that they're good material. that diversity is important, that there's a contribution to it. And a lot of times the consumers are women themselves of the company that's serving them. So the conversation has shifted a lot. But there are a lot more things that need to get done in each organization because, one, there has to be a leadership buy-in to it. It cannot be an HR problem. It has to be driven by leadership, one. Two, there have to be business metrics. Just like any other metrics,
Right.
this has to be measured. And you need to measure not just for how much percentage of women, because everybody feels very happy saying, I now have so many percentage of women. I'm not dissing that. But what's your promotion pipeline? What's your gender pay gap? Because there is, by the way, very real gender pay gap, right? How many women are there at the decision-making table? So metrics have to be there, policies have to change, and support systems, as you said, have to happen. Plus, women have to learn to dream. And we need to allow them the fact that they can dream big. So yes, but overall, it's very positive. The conversation has shifted fairly dramatically. And just, I wanted to add to one thing that Arundhati had said about women being the primary caregivers. Arundhati is not just in India, because as part of the G20 on the Empower 20, I was leading a task force on women in the workforce. And it was surprising to me, it was learning to me, how country after country came up with women are the primary caregivers, however senior they go. Can we do something about it?
And I can
Sindhu?
totally add to that, Rekha, because I lived in Germany for 18 years, and all our neighbors right across our street, women PhDs, staying back at home to take care of their kids. So it's not a problem that's only here, right?
It's a systemic issue
universal.
that we need to solve for.
That's true. Sindhu, just touching on that point, there is an underrepresentation of women across corporate India and even in the world, right? And technology, though, it's very interesting. I'm not going to name one of the tech companies, but we cover a lot of technology here in the Business Today Multiverse and India Today. And whenever I interact with this massive tech company, you see that it's not just women, in the inclusion agenda, but it is across LGBTQ, right? QIA+. And it's amazing to see them wear their heart on their sleeve. Those sort of conversations are not shied away from. All of these diverse, this plethora of views that come from such an approach, do you think that, it deprives, as you're heading a top organization yourself, does it deprive the organization of growth and a unique form of innovation if this sort of inclusive agenda is not really maintained?
I mean, to Rekha's point, right, why did we pass the regulation to have more women on boards? It's not just because of we want women on boards. It's because it's very clear there's enough science and proof out there, right, which is proven through research. The more diverse that you have in terms of taking decisions, driving those decisions for your organization, and having a very diverse set of people, not just women, right, every section of society. Because, I mean, for us as a product company, we are taking our products to 180 countries in the world, which means our consumers are extremely diverse. So it's super important to have that diversity in the organization to make sure that it's reflected in the products that we build, in the thinking that we have, of the respect that we have for our consumers. So it's no more a question how we should or how quickly can we is the question, right? And another point that I want to add is today the beauty of technology, Ayush, is also a lot of these can be addressed with technology.
Yes.
Like bias in recruitment. Today you can leverage technology because, I mean, large organizations, they have hundreds and thousands of postings out there. How do you make sure that those postings are bias-free so that anybody who reads it clearly understands, hey, that's something that I could aspire for? Because today when you have manually put out CVs, there's so much of bias. Like Arundhati said, a lot of us are also conditioned with what made us and what was the boundaries that we had, right? But technology is what is driving that kind of change. Or if you look at how are we bringing in suppliers from marginalized parts of the society. Today we have technology that helps you to very quickly identify, hey, how do I make sure that I have a good mix of suppliers that makes sure that I meet my sustainability targets, my social targets, make sure that I bring in different parts of people from so a lot of things can be addressed with technology, and that I think that's the beauty of
Every business is a technology business now.
yeah. And today, I mean, we had the earlier panelists as well from various industries, right? Today, all of those industries are tech-driven industries.
Yes.
That's the beauty, right?
It's a common disruptor. I think, Rekha, your mic didn't come on then. Every business is a technology business.
Still not on.
I did the voiceover for you there. But coming to that point, I do want to really talk a little bit more about this, and then we'll just quickly segue towards innovation in the tech space. Arundhati, I was, consuming a lot of content and doing a lot of research for this particular panel, and I loved one thing you said. In Gen Z and millennials, we keep talking about hustle culture. We want to keep hustling and doing so much in our limited time, work hard, play hard. But something that you said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that is something you followed over the years, is to seek discomfort. And I think that has been where you've seen maximum growth. So now I'm not going to address this only to the ladies or young girls, it's young boys and everyone who really looks up to you, what you did at your previous organization, what you're doing right now. How much of that do you really attribute to the motto, seeking discomfort?
I think that is something that is very important, because it's very easy to become comfortable in your space. And at the moment you become comfortable in your space, you cease to grow. And if you cease to grow, then actually speaking, there is degrowth. Everybody, if you look at anything that is organic, the day you stop growing, that day you stop dying. Okay? So it's the same thing with any career. The moment you cease to be uncomfortable and therefore wanting to learn, wanting to become comfortable, that's the time when you are really beginning the slide downwards. So it's important for you to keep, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and into new areas, because that's what brings growth, that's what brings satisfaction, basically.
We speak of problem sets in technology, and then we talk about mischiefs being managed. Now, since we want to talk about technology and innovation, the buzz everywhere is AI, AI, AI. Now, I'm not going to get too geeky about this, but artificial general intelligence is something that the world fears as much as it is curious about it. Rekha, I want to get your thoughts on this. This comes back to Sindhu's point on technology being a leveler. It sees no background, no race, no gender. Is that something that is genuinely worrisome, as with machine learning algorithms, as these large language learning models, these AI monsters that we talk about, get smarter and smarter, maybe become a little bit more sentient, and then have the equivalent of feelings? Does this worry you, men and women alike?
So let me try and answer that, and I'm not an AI expert to start with.
But a technology expert, for
yes.
sure.
So, one, it's a new technology. Two, like every tool, it has the potential to be used for good, and it has the potential to be used for bad. A knife can, cut butter or can kill somebody. So it's the same thing with this new technology. On biases, I actually want to correct you, because it's based on large language models, as you said, on data. And if the data is biased, your responses will be biased. And we've seen that. I mean, we have multiple examples already. For example, in the financial services sector, and I'm not pointing to the financial services sector, but in the financial services sector, people were being denied loans because they were of a certain color or minority or etc. because the data that had been fed in was biased. So that's the worry. Can it be used, misused? Yes. But does it also provide huge opportunities, especially in our country, for new types of jobs, for new types of growth, and for women sitting in tier 2, tier 3 cities to participate? Whether it's in using the financial payments model that people have now built, or leveraging technology to participate. So we have to wait and watch this space. But again, like everything else, I'm optimistic, because I'm saying the good will prevail, and it's for the good, right? Without going into the techie details of what exactly it is.
Fair enough. That'll be a conversation for another day. But Sindhu, is that something that you think will be a disruptor, a leveler? All these conversations of diversity and inclusion. The reason I was asking Rekha that was that when we feed this data, and when this, machine learning sort of algorithm learns from our actions, if else, yes, no, binary 0 and 1, it also develops something of a mind of its own. Is this something you think will be a disruptor in the tech space? Something that might not work as positive as Rekha is for the
No,
betterment of the sector?
Ayush, I'd go back to what I said around driving innovation, right? Why did I say that we need to have diversity? Exactly for those reasons
Okay.
that Rekha mentioned. Because finally, when you look at these large language, it's not anymore only language models, right?
Yeah.
These are visual models, audio
Everything.
models, everything is in there, right? The technology is just so rapidly evolving. One key thing which will be needed is that whole adaptability, that learnability, the whole resilience as well in people to be able to keep up with that. But your question was about how do we make sure that this does not take over? And this is exactly why this whole focus on responsible
Yes.
usage of AI is front and center in all the conversations that we are having right here in India, but also globally,
Yes.
right? I mean, in Europe, this has been a big topic, big topic. I mean, if you think about everything around GDPR, and this has been a focus topic even way before Gen AI came into the mix, right? Because AI has been around for more than a decade now. So it's very important that no matter how we can revolutionize the way things are being done, the way we work, the way we look at business processes and all of that, it's super important that the data that we feed the algorithms with, which is trained,
Correct.
is really is correct, right? And this is why it's very important to have also ethics teams in place in large organizations who's really having an understanding of how the data is being modeled, and are those use cases something that we want to put out there. So a lot of things need to be put into place. It's not just about like how everybody is on ChatGPT and using it.
Yeah.
Super important how you model those data, people who know to visualize the data, tell the stories around the data. All those skills becomes even more important in these times. No?
You know, that's interesting. Rekha, your mic's on now this time.
Could I just add one
Of
more
course.
thing to that? I think we also need a lot more collaboration between industry, government, and countries.
Globally.
Because this is not, this is cross-border.
It transcends
And
borders.
countries are coming together on it, but we need to, and we just have to be vigilant and keep adapting. As Sindhu said, we're going to have to keep adapting.
Sure. You know, we have limited time on the clock, but I think I know the MC, and we'll squeeze in a couple of questions more. Arundhati, from your career and right from the start, when you were in college and then this amazing career that you've had over the past few years, I want to understand the importance of role models. And this is, again, our new theme, gender neutral, for a young girl or a young boy to have a role model and then to really rise the corporate ladder. How important do you think it is, especially with some of the issues that we've been talking about, to really stress on the right role models for a large set of perhaps Gen Z and the next generation coming through?
So I think it depends, I don't think it's always dependent on role models.
Okay.
Some people need them, some people are, they would want to become whatever they want to become without even having a role model there. What the role model basically does is when you have a moment of hesitation, when you have a moment of doubt, you look at that role model and say that if that person could have done it, so can I.
Correct.
Okay? But that moment of doubt and the moment of fear, whatever it is, there are a lot of people who can overcome it by themselves, who can overcome it on account of the fact that they have the ability or have created in themselves the attributes that enable them to go past those things. However, for the general masses, so to speak, when they are at a particular place and they are aiming for something well beyond that pace, yes, it is good to have role models. But I don't think it's a must. I don't really think it's a must.
Rekha?
Well, the generation I come from and Arundhati comes from, I'll speak for her too, we didn't have role models. We navigated our way
exactly what I was
through.
saying.
We had
Yeah.
nobody to follow. So it was a lonely furrow that you were plowing and you navigated, you stumbled. So yes, my advice actually would be have a personal board. Somebody who knows you, just like a corporate board, have a personal board. I have that, which is different people who know you in different aspects of you and can give you advice. And it
Good.
doesn't have to be from work.
And the diversity and inclusion is a part of that board as well, this board as well.
They have to be diverse. But they could all be men, but they could just
Absolutely.
be very diverse men. So it doesn't matter. Gender is not important.
Sindhu, we have to ask you this. Do genders matter when you're considering role models?
Absolutely. I mean, because, I mean, and I tend to disagree a bit. I think role models are very important.
Finally, someone disagrees
very
on the panel.
important.
We didn't have
Not because, see,
Because I think she comes from
no,
a
no,
later
no. Even
generation.
when I started
younger.
when I started in technology, there were no women tech leaders out there. Indira Gandhi and my mom was my role models, right? So they, but the more I work with people in the marginalized parts of the country, right? They need those aspirational role models who show them, and these can be baby steps. Women who can code, I mean, small things. You don't need to be on the massive stage or anything. But I think media has a significant role to play here, Ayush, and I want to call that out. Put out the right models out there, role models whom you want that small child sitting in some remote corner of the world to look up and like, oh wow, I want to do that. I can be that. And that's super important. So role models are very important.
Okay, I'm glad Sindhu came up with that point. So there's an update to our conversation. Rekha, you want to chime in?
I absolutely agree. I was just talking about how the two of us in our time had to grow up. But absolutely, if you had people you could look up to or talk to, which we got later in our lives.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking for Arundhati too, much later.
In hindsight, Arundhati, very quickly, would that have augmented your whole growth story and your personal story if you had the right mentor at the right time?
No, see, mentors and role models are different. Okay.
Yeah.
I always feel that, especially if you're in an organization or even if you're in a business of your own, it's very important to have mentors. Mentors are people that you go back to when you have a doubt, when there's a fork in the road and you don't know whether you should go left or right. So mentors are very important. And in fact, in an organization, I also tell people that they need not only mentors, they also need sponsors. Sponsors are basically people who are closer to you, maybe not 3 or 4 steps ahead of you, and they are the people who will sort of bear testimony regarding your capabilities and push you into the right positions. You know, so having mentors and sponsors are very, very important. But they necessarily may not be role models.
Brilliant. We managed to pack in so much in this conversation. Ladies, thank you so much. We hope, and Sindhu, we will be cutting all these clips and putting them all over, and the media will be used in the right way. You've been an awesome audience. We're going to move on to the next session. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Yes. I will now move to the side and request you to stay on stage as Siddharth Zarabi, our managing editor at Business Today TV, will express a token of our gratitude to my esteemed panelists. Here, please, Siddharth. Journey through leadership and innovation with a very special guest. In this session with Nandini Piramal, we will hear about her journey as a woman leader, her insights into the future of the pharmaceutical industry, emphasizing innovation